Our recap of the big stories of 2021 continues with a story of commemoration and dedication. While it had been providing services to the Greenstone area for some time, Geraldton's new expanded emergency room had been holding a secret until late October. That's when officials gathered to officially name the new ER after a local physician. While the $21 million expansion of Geraldton's emergency department is complete from a physical and operational standpoint, something was still missing. And that something, as hospital CEO Daryl Galusha says, was difficult to keep under wraps.
We've kept that covered. We've had things. This man has dedicated his life, his family life, his personal life to the people of the Greenstone district. It was a unanimous decision to choose to name the ER in honor of Dr. Lane.
For 40 years, Dr. Roy E. Lane has brought people into this world, saved lives, contributed to the health and well-being of residents, and at one point in 2005 was the only physician in the Greenstone area. A man of few words, Dr. Lane was taken aback slightly by the unveiling. What were you kind of feeling when you saw that?
A bit dumbfounded, yeah. It was quite a surprise.
The expanded space not only includes 5 rooms for emergency care, but is also bringing chemotherapy to the region for cancer patients and space for mental health supports. Greenstone Mayor Renan Beaulieu heralds the project as a game changer, not just for his community though.
It takes a while to put things like this together, but you know what? We should all be proud. This is a necessity for our community, for the region, for our Indigenous communities, fly-in surroundings. This is an area that needs to have the proper service for our healthcare service.
In 2019, Minister Greg Rickford was able to announce the expansion of the ER and came back 2 years later to see the improvements while attending a ceremony at the new Greenstone mine this week.
We're so pleased, but this is an example of the kind of asset a community like Greenstone is going to require if we're going to build a mine here in this municipality. So it's just the beginning, Ryan, but it's probably the one that's most important as a former nurse who's lived and worked across Northern Ontario.
Adam Riley, TBT News. The 2021 forest fire season officially came to an end in November. It was once again a season that threatened communities, forced evacuations, choked the Northwest in a thick, hazy smoke, and also managed to break some records.
It's surely one that will earn a place in our organization's memory for in many respects.
Out of the record-shattering 793,000 hectares burned by forest fires in Ontario this year, the vast majority were here in the Northwest, with nearly 780 hectares burned as a result of the 989 fires that ignited between the Manitoba-Ontario border and Marathon. According to Fire Information Officer Chris Marchand, much of the heavier fire activity, which saw larger community-threatening fires, took place in the Red Lake region.
Particularly where we call the elbow. It's where that corner of the boundary makes an angled turn. That area in particular is very fire prone. It's a combination of the fuels and the weather pattern. We had lots of hot, dry, windy weather and with very little rainfall. And that is a perfect recipe for those very large fires that we saw in those areas.
This year, weather stations in that elbow area recorded half or even 1/3 of the normal amount of rainfall. And as felt by area farmers, most of the Northwest experienced drought conditions. And as a result, the AFFES will be tracking those conditions and factoring them into the fire hazard for next spring. Marchand notes, in addition to the overall hectares burned in the Northwest, 2 of the largest fires seen in the region, one in the Kenora district and one in the Red Lake district, surpassed records themselves, one of which achieving a notable accolade.
The Kenora 51 fire is actually the largest fire on record now in Ontario at 200,677 hectares. It surpassed a 2011 fire from Sioux Lookout. And that fire accounted for, 1/4 of the hectares burned this season in Ontario.
As for 2022, Marchand says it's difficult to predict what the next fire season will bring, but is hopeful they will see manageable situations that will have minimal impact on people, lives, and property. Adam Riley, TBT News. Following years of discussions with area First Nations, the highway twinning project from the Manitoba border to Kenora took another step forward in late November. Minister of Northern Development and Indigenous Affairs Greg Rickford and Ontario Transportation Minister Carolyn Mulroney were in Kenora to sign 2 contracts with Indigenous partners. One was for the tree and brush removal within the new right-of-way for the first section of the twinning. The other is for producing the raw materials needed to build the road base. The four-laning project has been on the table for more than a decade, and the two cabinet ministers say the Ford government is making it happen. Rickford, who is also the MPP for Kenora-Rainy River, says he is looking forward to finally seeing physical work begin, knowing it will benefit more than just those who travel along the highway from Kenora into Manitoba.
Shoal Lake 39, which sits right at the border, almost literally, is a community that had a requirement for a road to be built, to be repaired into and straightened into their community. So they're doing the clearing. That started like sometime this week or early next. Win 4 is involved in the raw material processing required to create the right-of-way once the trees are cut, and the RFP for the construction of the actual road, so the surface and other components is now well underway.
Earlier that month, Rickford was joined by Labour Minister Monty McNaughton in Kenora to announce a $3.7 million training initiative for some of the Indigenous communities who are working on the project. A man who participated in the kidnapping and beating of another man who he thought had information about his missing sister received a lengthy prison sentence in November. 30-year-old Andrew Atway is the brother of Alyssa Turnbull, the young woman who disappeared in the Nipigon area in early 2020. In September of that year, 4 men forcibly confined and assaulted a man in Nipigon, demanding info about Turnbull's disappearance. The victim was then put in the trunk of a car, but he managed to escape and contact police. Atway pleaded guilty to kidnapping with a firearm and aggravated assault. The judge sentenced him to 6 years, citing vigilantism as a serious concern. Turnbull remains missing, with a $50,000 reward posted by the OPP. Coming up after the break, the Township of Ignace announces its plans to proceed on the topic of an underground nuclear waste storage facility.